afraid that I am also getting over a cold, so if you hear a frog, that's just me. But the title today is a little bit misleading, because it's really learning entrepreneurship from investors. Really, I would say what entrepreneurs would benefit more from is learning more about investors. Really, they know a lot about entrepreneurship, and I think they can learn other things, but what they need to learn is who investors are, what investors care about. And when I talk about investors, I'm going to focus pretty narrowly. I'm going to focus on the sector known as angel investors. I myself have been an angel investor for somewhat over 25 years. And what I can tell you, if you've been an angel investor for a fairly long time, as I have, you have developed both a somewhat tough skin and a good sense of humor. But the important thing is to really think about what is an angel investor? Who are we talking about? Who are you looking for as your investor? So the typical angel investor has kind of a pretty well-defined profile, actually. You can think of somebody who was, in fact, a previous entrepreneur. Somebody who's actually in your shoes, started their own technology company or their own company of some sort, was successful with their company, had a good exit, and now they're kind of at a place where they're not as, Charlie or Eric are ready to start yet their third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh companies, I guess, in those cases, but actually looking now to potentially step back, maybe not be the CEO, but to actually get involved in some new generation of companies. So I actually had a technology company that I sold early in 2007, so I became active again as an angel investor. So just so you know, during about the 10 years I had my own company, I was not at all active as an angel investor. Basically all my angel investing was in my own company, and I spent all of my time on my own company, as many of you will, and probably understand that. But once I'd sold it, I actually became active as an angel investor again. So it's about 2007, I've been a member of the New York Angels, which in this region is one of the most active of the angel groups. And of course, actually with Jerry Creighton and some others, we actually recently just founded the NJIT Highlander Angel Network here, which is based here at NJIT. We're looking to invest actually in companies with kind of, DNA from around here. And that was founded actually in 2013, been running for just about a year now, I guess. Actually, Stephanie knows all about this. But very helpful. So, what are angels looking for? Well, they're looking to give more than money. Okay? If it was just about writing a check, then frankly, they're probably not going to be very interested. Because angels have been in your shoes and want to be able to help you be successful in your business. They typically want to make investments that line up very closely with the entrepreneurs themselves. And so the interests of the angel investors and entrepreneurs are usually very closely aligned. But they want to be able to share their experiences and share their network with companies that they make investments in to help them become successful. Now, you should know that angels invest in people, not in thank you. They invest in people. Now, people with ideas, it's not just people with ideas, hopefully good ideas, not always, but they're aiming for good ideas. But they're not investing in either patents or intellectual property or technology. Those are nice to have. Those can add value to your business. But I can tell you that as an angel investor, if I don't think that the person is a good person who's going to really bring a business to success, then they can be talking about a great idea and it's not going to really matter. And by the way, conversely, I can think that this is really a great person who has the right sort of energy and passion and integrity and devotion to hard work to really bring a business success. And if they don't have the right business model, I'm pretty sure that we'll be able to help them find it. So in fact, so I would say that you really ought to think about the fact that angels are investing in people. What do we look for? We're looking for people who are smart, hardworking, honest. I'll say that again, honest. We write contracts in terms of those investments, but the credibility of the entrepreneur is really their single biggest asset. You have to be very careful about how you present yourself when you oversell or whatever else you might want to call it. Those things are very telling, and you're looking to be able to create a track record and be reliable. We're also looking for people who are passionate. I'm looking for strong skills, either technical, people skills. I saw a company just the other day. One of my fellow angels was looking at this company and said, well, that guy was some sort of salesman. And as if that was a criticism, I said, hey, wait, I'd like to invest in companies where good salespeople. I mean, the answer is I have a lot of, good technical people in my companies. Good salespeople really helps a lot too, so don't underestimate that. Angels very often may be looking to reinvest in themselves. That's actually an important thing for you to understand because an angel investor, remember, was kind of in your shoes. You're an entrepreneur, you're passionate about your company, you're trying to get it started. An angel investor was there, kind of been there, done that. And they may be looking at, they were successful themselves, they may be looking to kind of replicate themselves, maybe kind of a younger, hipper version, but kind of like themselves. You'll be pleased to know that among the New York Angels, really it's a whole room full of geeks. Basically these are all people that they're not, nobody really stands especially tall. Well, just a few tall ones, but not spiritually. But they're really looking for kind of other people who are a little like themselves. And so, kind of don't be afraid to sort of show yourself who you are and what you are. Angel investors, again, finding that sort of bonding or finding that kind of identification with the potential investor is actually going to be one of your strengths. One of the key questions which we ask is the entrepreneur coachable? Coachable is kind of one of those tricky words. We want the entrepreneur to be independent and strong. We want the entrepreneur to be CEO. We're not intending to become the CEO. In fact, angel investors will never, actually, genuine angel investors will never take a majority stake in your company. Sorry. That was coming. Even if you offer it. Not that you should. But the point is that they're looking for someone that they can work with. I had a company that had a very promising technology. The guy actually developed a good technology. The guy was a really good salesperson. The guy actually found some customers for the technology. We had some ideas about how he could expand his market. And now I'm a professor, so you have to understand. I gave him a homework assignment, which is what I do in these cases. And met with him a week later for our kind of continued discovery session. And he hadn't done his homework. And kind of fell off my list. The answer is, okay, look, I didn't ask you to do something really hard. You had 3 weeks to do it. You didn't do it. Why not? Right? You're asking for money. The answer is, you have to indicate that there's some sort of rapport that's going on here. If we think it, even if you think, but this is actually interesting, but even if you think my idea is not a good idea, if you want me to be a participant in your company, you want me to be a mentor of your company, and this is true for any mentorship relationship, by the way, if a mentor gives you advice, what you need to do is you need to take it. And then you need to go back to them 3 weeks or 6 weeks or even 3 months later, whatever the relevant time period is, and go back to them and say, hey, I took your advice and this is what happened. This is what I did. And this is what happened. Now, either of 3 things is going to happen. Either they're going to give you a piece of advice, which is a fantastic piece of advice. They give you a piece of advice, you follow their advice, things went swimmingly, big win, you're happy about that. Now, you're happy about that. They're happy to give you a piece of good advice too. And so if you come back to them for more advice or potential investment, they're very interested in helping you because you follow their advice and it's helpful and paid off. There's the scenario also where they give you a piece of advice. It turns out to be crappy advice. You follow it, you try it, and nothing happened. Nobody cared, nothing happened. Report back anyhow in about 6 weeks. Report back anyhow in about 6 weeks. If you did the work for them, and you tell them that I did this, I did that, and they say, now they're kind of on the hook because you asked them for a piece of advice. They gave you some advice. They gave you bad advice. Well, it's not the end of the world because now, in fact, they owe you a better piece of advice. So now, they know it by the way because you did the work. And so now you gave advice and followed it. So then they say, well, geez, now I better come up with a better piece of advice. So that's a good thing. And then the third is kind of the sad one where you kind of like limp along, where your piece of advice is kind of like ambiguous, but generally you want to try to get to one of those other 2 outcomes. So what's the entrepreneur's job in this relationship? So the entrepreneur's job, if you think your job is to start your company, and I understand it could be communications or a helmet or kind of new security, technology. All these things are great ideas and ideas that have real promise and potential. But the problem, I guess, is your job from the investor's perspective is actually not that. Your job from the investor's perspective is to actually continue to reduce the risk of your business. right? Right up front, your business is super duper risky, okay? You may or may not think it's super duper risky, but I can assure you, having seen it from the other side, super duper risky, okay? And so, so what you need to do is, your job is to reduce the risk. And in fact, reducing the risk is absolutely what increases the value of your company, okay? Your value of the company will go up in direct proportion to how much risk you can reduce. So, and especially for companies that are looking for multiple rounds of investment. So this is even more true if it's not a one and done. If it's a one and done, well, okay, you can kind of get away with, one investment. If you can make it kind of cross the valley of death, whatever, get to the other side and have a successful business, that's cool. But if you're going to be looking for multiple rounds of investments, and many of you are going to be looking for multiple rounds, you're going to be forced to look for multiple rounds. I mean, again, if you're going to try to build your own helmets, the answer is, if you're going to be in a manufacturing business, I can assure you need multiple rounds. So maybe licensing technology is a better idea, although I've got the manufacturing to license. They're aftermarket, all those things are things. But the point is, if you can figure out how to reduce the risk of your business, you can make your business worth a lot more. Okay? So your job is reducing the risk. Now that can mean that you need to prove the technology works. That can mean that you need to secure the intellectual property. That can mean that you need to identify who your actual customers are. That can mean that you need to get orders from your actual customers. That can mean that you need to build a team that is going to solve all the problems that you need to run your business. And it also means that you need to be able to scale and reproduce those sales. Now, of course, if you do all those things, you have an operating business, at which point, you get to have some fun. So I wanted to kind of segue here a little bit, because, of course, actually, as you probably figured out, I wear multiple hats. And I'm actually a professor, so I get to do research and stuff. And so I wanted to share with you, actually, a kind of new, brand new piece of research that literally just got published in June of 2014. And anybody wants to look for a Journal of Business Venturing. There's an article which I co-authored called How Entrepreneurs Seduce Business Angels. Now, that's a catchy title, and of course, as a good academic, one wants a catchy title because one wants people to read your article. But the point really is, at this very early stage, it's a huge problem because it's very hard to marry up money with ideas. Because that idea is kind of this very ephemeral thing, and the money as well, that's money. And so, and getting the money to actually match up with the ideas, it turns out that's really hard. Because if you have an idea, you may or may not be able to actually even tell the investor what the idea is fully, because maybe it's not fully protected, or maybe you don't want to have them just steal your idea and run off with it, or you're worried that they will. Good investors never do, by the way, but not everyone's a good investor, so it's not get a hitter. But the other thing is that and of course you're going to say things, but nothing you say is provable. It's all hypotheses, and those hypotheses basically are educated guesses. You might have some evidence, but you need to figure out how to, again, strengthen that evidence, reduce the risk of the business, but you also need to figure out about how to create an impression with the potential investor. So this particular article focuses on this theory known as impression management. Most of the literature, impression management, just to kind of do a little background here, is on people looking for jobs, right? Impression management is really about how you pitch yourself in order to get a job. And of course, actually, for angels or entrepreneurs who have done this, it's actually not very different from pitching yourself to angel investors to get money. So there's a bunch of things you're going to want to do. You're going to want to promote your organization, right? You're going to want to talk about my company and how good it is. And if you're going to pitch yourself to angels, you should probably know this. Angels actually look at a lot of potential deals. Conservatively, I probably look at upwards of 50 deals a month. Looking at 50 deals a month, I can't possibly, as you can understand, look at 50 pitches, not to mention 50 business plans. So I sort through them pretty quickly, and basically what I look at, and what almost any serious angel looks at, is actually a one-page presentation. You're going to need to figure out how to do an excellent job of presenting your business on one page. Okay, literally one page. And that's a hard problem, by the way. I know people that have spent 60, 80 hours working on writing their business plan and their pitch and whatever, and then spend another 120 hours working on their one-pager. Right? Trying to really hone so that every word really gets to what you really need to deliver. Because that one pager is going to be like, yeah, like the sorting hat and Harry Potter. It's like where you go sort of depends on where that one pager sits. And people aren't going to go past the one pager. I mean, if you get past the one pager, then people start to like look at your 10-minute pitch or look at your deck or start to look at your financial projections, look at some other things. But if your one pager does not meet muster, then you are never going to get past the one pager. So your one pager really, really matters. I can't emphasize this strongly enough. So what we did is we actually looked at several hundred one-pagers that were actually submitted to the New York Angels over the period 2004-2006. And we looked at, and of course, those one-pagers are going to have a lot of numbers. They're going to have to tell you about like how much revenue you have, or how many years you've been in business, how much investment there is, how many employees you have, and it's also going to have your financial projections. You ever start with their financial projections, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a standard feature of these things. But just so you know, everybody understands that is an artful work of fiction, by the way. Everybody understands that basically that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is just totally made up. It's kind of an educated guess based on a bunch of scientific well-asked assumptions. But but basically, but we all require it anyhow, and we're going to use that as kind of a way to sort of evaluate you. And we actually looked at whether we could actually predict whether people got funded or not based on sort of their numbers, their numerical statistics. Turns out we had about roughly a 35% success rate in predicting which proposals were going to fund it or not based on sort of their numbers. But then we actually started, let's look at the language they're using, because this impression management is really like, it's not just a matter of the numbers, it's really a matter a lot about sort of how you present yourself. Now, of course, in a forum like this, you can present yourself as a person, and all three of the presenters were really fantastic presenters, by the way, I should point out. But in a one pager, you're kind of limited to sort of what goes on the one page. So we're looking for kind of what you say about yourself, and it turned out, just like you get a punchline. The punchline is by incorporating what they have in the text, by interpreting what they have in the text through a couple of very simple metrics, which I'll tell you about. We're able to increase the likelihood of predicting which companies are going to get funded or not. We actually were able to get about 70% right. Now, 7% right is actually pretty impressive when you recognize that only about, for the New York Angels, and the companies that pitch the New York Angels, somewhere around 8% of the companies that actually present actually get funded. So the number, so there's a lot that don't get funded, so figuring out which ones do is actually not an easy problem. So what we looked at is, in this research, we actually looked at kind of how they present themselves. We looked at two simple metrics. One, we looked at how they promoted their business. One is that they use positive language. Now this is going to sound simple. I mean, of course you're supposed to use positive language about your business, but it turns out actually, you'd be surprised how people can be very reticent, and they can actually talk about their business as like, in a very sort of protected way. And so, if you're not positive about your business, you're not passionate about your business, that's the way it comes through in a one-pager. I can assure you I'm not passionate about your business. I mean, if you don't care about it, I'm unlikely to care. But of course, actually, it goes the other way too, and that is, if you over-promote your business, and you talk about, oh my God, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, nothing's ever like it in the world, and we have no competition, and everybody, I mean, every single person in the world is a potential customer, and of course we're going to have 5% of those in 5 years, well, you can overdo it also. So it turns out that actually the principle that applies here is eventually that's becoming what I call the Goldilocks principle. That is, you don't want to be too reticent, but you don't want to be too promotional. You want to find that sweet spot, and it actually turns out that you can actually find that sweet spot for use of positive language. A word about innovativeness. Innovation, that's hot, right? We all know innovation's hot. Everybody knows innovation's hot. That's important. And innovation is good, I agree with that. But, and of course, the way people talk about the business, you want to present your business as being innovative, and you want to present it as potentially disruptive, potentially important in the market and industry, and that's clearly something you want to do. But you can overdo that also, because, again, as a potential investor, if your business is super innovative, well, they may be kind of ahead of the market. It kind of goes away from, kind of what we affectionately call the cutting edge to what we call the bleeding edge. And one wants to stay kind of back from the bleeding edge. And so again, when you're talking about your business, how innovative and how original it is, again, you want to talk about those things. Those things, if you fail to do that, that's going to hurt your likelihood of getting funding. But of course, if you overdo it, then you start to just look a little crazy. And basically, maybe like you're ahead of the market and maybe there is no customer base. I mean, again, when you say that you have no competition, that could actually mean that nobody cares about your product or service. And, basically, that's not necessarily where you want to be. So, so again, this kind of the Goldilocks principle kind of applies. Okay, now I'm going to say the thing where again, this is tricky, but when you're pitching to angel investors, you want to, I told you before that in many cases they're looking for people who are like you. Well, to the extent that you can actually present yourself basically as kind of having kind of opinions that conform, you're part of the group, you sort of conform with your potential investors, that actually is going to help you. In fact, by the way, this is interesting, actually in our research, these are all statistically significant results I'm giving you. That it really matters if you don't really care, which you probably won't. But opinion conformity means that you are not way out there. You are somebody like them. And remember, you're looking to invest in somebody who's kind of like themselves in many cases. So that's going to be a positive asset. In fact, actually, the more you can make yourself like them, actually that just goes up and up and up. There is no Goldilocks there. If you can basically mind meld with your potential investors, you can, that's like, okay. If you can mind meld with your potential investors, they'll give you money because you are like thinking like one. You're like in sync. And that's something that you want to do. And so that pretty much always works. Finally, your investors actually are going to want to know that you value them. And the way you do that is in impression management, the term supplication, which is a little strong. But you need to make the ask. You need to make the ask. And so you need to let them know what it is you want. And actually, here's where, by the way, just in this audience, you weren't really pitching for money, I understand exactly, but I would say each of the three presenters asked for money, but didn't necessarily kind of, didn't really talk about sort of what else they might get. And that's going to be something that you want to do for potential investors. You're going to want to let them know that you're looking for some help. You're looking for their network. You're looking for their experience, in addition to their money, and that's going to help you. Now, again, of course, same problem applies. If you don't ask for anything, you're probably not going to get anything, right? So that's kind of the zero case. And of course, if you beg and plead and you're desperate, well, that's probably not going to be a thing that's going to be likely to be attractive to potential investors. If you look desperate, the answer is, why are you so desperate? And why did nobody else that you asked before come up with money? So then they start to second guess themselves. Again, you're looking at the same Goldilocks thing where you want to basically make sure you make an ask. You want to make sure that you ask cleanly. You make sure you want to ask for not just money. Talk about kind of your advisory board. Talk about the fact that the helmet I saw. I noticed Mario Casabono was one of your advisors. I don't know if you went through Tech Launch. Yes, Tech Launch. Yeah. So that would be part of the deal. But the point is, Mario actually has good staying power, right? And the answer is he's good value, and he's going to be able to continue to help you, as you go down the line. Putting him up there, kind of tells other investors, okay. I know Mario, and tells other investors that okay, you are prepared to sort of work with somebody, and again, of course, that then is also a reference for me in terms of people that I can check up on you about. So anyhow, so really that's kind of where I wanted to leave it. I was gonna give you some examples. I had some language here, because I just wanted to kind of give you a sense of. This is from actual one-pagers, by the way. What do we mean when I talk about high positivity or high promotion, high innovativeness, and high supplication? So high positivity kind of reads something like this. We demonstrate our ability to consistently drive strong profits, and the strong financial result reflects the broad strengths of our brands and their ability to drive leading margins. Okay, now that's kind of a positive statement. That's a strong positive statement, probably not over the top, because again, you need to be pretty strong. I mean, underdoing is worse than overdoing it, I'd say, by the way. High promotion of innovativeness, what are we talking about? We revolutionized the search engine industry by launching a new model for identifying relevant results. Our founders are young visionaries who understand the need for innovation in this industry. right? Again, you're looking for kind of the words which are going to talk about how new it is, but without without kind of getting kind of, you know, way off the charts. And I want to give you one more actually here. Supplication, which is one of the ones that entrepreneurs have the most difficulty with. We suffer from a lack of resources. Our performance has been weak due to shrinking domestic markets. And again, this is, you know, you're describing, this is not an ask for money. This is an ask for help. And help is something that, again, assuming you've already gotten the committee conformity and got some other things right, by that time now, an investor's going to want to try to help you. And so that's really what you want to sort of, you know, tie into. Anyhow, so I ended up sort of making a bit of a two-parter. I apologize, Michael. We talked about this a while ago, but I really want to tell you a little bit about sort of, you know, who are you talking to? You know, you're talking to people like myself and others who are not so dissimilar. That also, as a professor, wanted to share with you some of these results, which really kind of confirm some of the same things. Really talk about, how the actions you take to manage your impression, how you create a good impression on potential investors, and how you can actually manage that to drive towards success in terms of the funding event. All right, so I'm open to questions, and by the way, I'm open to any questions, so please feel free. Thanks, Mike.
So you said that there's this Goldilocks spot between over-promoting and under-promoting. Now, many of the entrepreneurs are techies, they are geeks. They would probably under-promote more than anything else. Would you have any advice for that?
Yeah, so first, you need to practice. Okay? So you need to practice, and you need to practice before a friendly audience. You cannot just kind of do this for your first time, talk to the investors. You need to, you know, practice and then practice some more. And so you can actually get people to give you feedback, who can actually then give you some ideas to whether or not you are over the top, or you're believable, not believable or not. I would say that you're right. I work with a lot of scientists and engineers, both here at MIT and in general. My entrepreneurs tend not to be coming from that sales place. They tend to be coming from the other place, why? That's the value of kind of a salesy entrepreneur. And you're right. They do tend to they tend to overtalk about features and benefits, and they tend to kind of, you know, fail to promote themselves, and they need to figure out how to talk about broader impacts and really kind of what the potential is looking forward, right? So they need to be able to talk about their vision and get past their technology, and that's just a matter of practice.
Michael, do angel investors have a sweet spot of the amount of money they like to invest in any one angel round or any one company?
So different investors do this differently. Most people kind of have a modal amount, and then they kind of vary from that modal amount. For the New York Angels, kind of our modal amount is $25,000 per angel. That's probably the modal amount. I tend to more center around $50,000 per, what that means. But then, and of course, for some companies, and I reserve money for subsequent rounds. So I always assume that there's likely to be a subsequent round that I want to at least invest pro rata in. So if I invest $25,000 or $50,000, I'm likely to retain $25,000 or $50,000 for potential future rounds of investment. Not everyone does that, but it's certainly good policy. I've experienced that very often that money doesn't take them all the way fast. Maybe they're going to need some more money. A trickier question is how much per angel round. That's a different question than how much per angel investor. So it used to be that when we did rounds, we would actually think of a round of being typically $800,000, and between about $500,000 and $2 million would be kind of a typical round for angel investors. Interestingly, that number has gone down over time because it's cheaper to start a company now than it's ever been. Basically, you can get, I mean, it used to be if you wanted to start a technology company, basically, the first thing you need to do is buy like a whole huge rack of servers and whatever, and set them all up, and set up a bunch of infrastructure, and you're probably going to spend a few $100,000 just on that. Now, of course, you can, for a few pennies, you can rent all that from Amazon Web Services, and you can basically be up and running pretty quickly. And so, so the cost to start a company is actually lower than it's ever been. So actually, the New York Angels are now probably funding an average of, say, 2 to 3 companies a month. But the amount of funding is going down. So I would say that our average round is probably less than $500,000, probably $400,000, $450,000 is our average round these days. Because companies really don't need more. In order to be able, now they may need more later, but they don't need more to be able to kind of really significantly de-risk and raise the value of the company, which is what we're investing for.
Michael, I hate to tax your throat any more than necessary, but how do you feel about the creative mind that comes up with a concept that doesn't want to be the CEO of their own company? How does an angel investor do that?
Yeah, so that's a good question. We very often get involved in helping entrepreneurs form teams. So very often you'll find that one of the companies I'm working with is started by a technology guy. He is still a technology guy. He still owns most of the company, but as it gets to market, he's brought in kind of a CEO who's much more salesy. And basically he's now CTO. He's still founder, but he's the CTO, and there's actually someone who else is the CEO who actually is the face of the company who is much more salesy. And so it's not uncommon to actually transition. In fact, not to scare you, but for those that get venture capital investments, the original founders actually, the half-life is significantly less than 5 years that they stay as actual CEOs. The VCs will usually demand as part of their investment that they get the right to replace or change the CEO, and they exercise that right frequently, actually. But again, that's not a disaster. Right? And some CEOs recognize that themselves, and so they recognize that I'm not really the guy who's the face. I'm maybe not as good at promoting my company, but I'm really strong on the technology. Let me take the job of CTO and let someone else be the CEO. That's not that uncommon. And what I would say is your angel investors or your board advisors or your VCs will help you, or in some cases force you to actually make that transition.
Yeah, I wanted to really make a comment that the angel community here in New Jersey and New York is really quite tight. And these guys and women all talk to each other. So if you've been pitching to the New York Angels and you've seen Michael and some of those angels, and then you are going to talk to some people in New Jersey, they will share information and what their experiences have been. So in some sense, you really have one time to make a good first impression.
Absolutely right. In fact, actually, if you really want to get an investment, you need to establish a track record. So, people tend to invest in lines, not dots. Okay, what do I mean by that? I saw 3 pitches today, right? Those are dots. They're good dots, but they're dots. But they may, now if I followed up and I sort of got their pitch decks and I looked at what they were doing, what I was interested, I may not make the investment, but what's going to happen is over 3 months, 6 months, they're going to tell me more stuff. And those things they additionally tell me are going to be great new dots. Well, now I've got a line. And lines tell me much more than dots because they really establish kind of a track record. There was a company which I did not invest in because the guy basically had a product and a service that would look very interesting, looked like good technology. I liked the guy, but he had 2 customers who were kind of friends of his, and I said, well, can you find any more customers? And what he said, in 6 months, he's going to have 95 customers. 6 months later, he came back. You know what? He had 97 customers. He told me he was going to have $2,000 a monthly recurring revenue, $2,400 a month of monthly recurring revenue. I said, time to invest in this guy, and I did. And so, so again, what he did is he turned himself from a dot into a line. He established credibility. He basically said what he was going to do. He did what he said he was going to do. And of course, that, by the way, is a motivator for him too, because what I know from somebody who did invest in him, a week before his presentation was he actually had 90 customers. But he knew he had to make a final push to get to 95. He actually got to 97 because he knew that he wanted to be able to meet the target of what he said and set for himself that he was going to do. He's a great entrepreneur and he's going to do very well, at least I hope so as an investor. But again, he turned himself from a line into a dot into a line, and that makes it much more investable. That answers your question.
How would you advise somebody that is reluctant to relinquish control, how they want to grow organically, versus go out to the venture community? How do you advise them on the pros and cons?
Yeah, so that's really a financial analysis. So the first thing is, I'm a lean startup guy, just so to be clear about this, and I live and die by the lean startup, whatever. And so if you don't know what that is, Google it. But basically what it means is that you are using as few resources you can, as limited resources you can in order to launch your business. That's always a good strategy because it always takes a little longer than you think. It's always a little more difficult than you think. There's always setbacks. And so, even if you think you have enough money to get you from here to there, what you're going to discover is, there is not there by the time you get there. And so, lean startup is a good strategy. Bootstrapping is a good strategy, right? Basically having customers who are so passionate about your product or service that they're prepared to pay you to help you solve their problem and give it to them, right? That's a great way to both get feedback from customers and to kind of launch yourself. So I'm a big fan of that. Now, having said that, there comes a time when you want to make a bigger push. Your company, maybe, say your argument, you've gotten to $2 million in revenue or $5 million in revenue, whatever the number is, and you're breaking even, the magic place. But at that point, might want to power yourself up to this kind of next level. That's a good place to potentially get a venture capital investment, where you can then say, okay, now I can build out my team, I can hire those salespeople, I can reach more markets, I can make myself international, I can make myself multi-state, I can go on more platforms, all those kinds of things, which are really kind of what I talk about, that scale up and reproduce, sales reproduction kind of stage. That's where VCs like to invest. That's where they're most likely to make their A-round investments. It's hard to get those earlier investments. And then also, I think that's where they can also add value, because that's really where their expertise is as well. I mean, again, when you're looking at venture capital investors, oftentimes you're looking at people who weren't necessarily entrepreneurs. People, often they're MBAs who kind of know a good bit about operating a business, but maybe not as much about actually starting it, interestingly enough. And so here, you're really looking for maybe their operational expertise to help you scale it up and figure out how to get to, from 5 million to 50 million of sales. Right? So, so there's kind of times when these different things make sense. And then you want to look at, if you think that your native growth rate is, say, 20%, but with the VC investment, you can make that 50% or 100% growth rate over the next couple of years. Well, even though then you have less of the company because you've given up some equity, that's a good trade for you, but you need to do those calculations. Sorry.
Hello, Dr. Allen. So I've read from various sources that it can be a turnoff for investors when an entrepreneur starts talking about an exit strategy before they even get any funding. Is that true?
So again, investors like the fact that you're thinking about an exit. I would say it's never bad to talk about exits in a slightly realistic way. Right? It doesn't have to be super realistic. It's kind of like those 5-year projections. It's part of the package. And so I would say talk about exits is not a bad thing. Having said that, we recognize you have absolutely no clue, and the answer is, you're just making this up. But at least you're thinking about exits, which is not a bad thing. I mean, again, it's like those graphs. I mean, we know that's not how it's going to work. I mean, anybody who's done this knows that a business plan does not survive even one day of actual contact with customers. Right? I mean, as soon as you actually write it, you are off the rails. As soon as just a minute you attempt to actually talk to anybody, you leave your lab or whatever. So we don't really think that's what's going to happen. But when I see that graph, I know that's what you want to have happen, and I think that's what I want to have happen too. So so therefore there's kind of, again, that goes back to some of the opinion conformity and some of the ability to sort of okay, you want that to happen, I want that to happen too. We're both going to own equity in this company. We're going to own the same kind of equity, and so that so that's not a negative. So I would say no. talking about any exits is a good thing, just like these 5-year projections is a good thing, even though we all recognize it's just total work of fiction, right? They just totally make up stuff. It's okay. Oh. Is there another back here? Yeah.
Hey, going back to the one-page business plan, right? How would you respond to humor in that? You know, is that something, would you write somebody off for that, or could it catch your eye?
So
Not overly, you know, like maybe
Yeah.
one funny thing. You know,
So I would say you have to be very careful about humor, okay? It's a one-pager. It's precious. Every word is precious. You know, if you're talking about helmet technology and you kind of make a little joke about, you know, turning your head into an egg on the pavement or something or other, that probably is just not going to fly with everybody. Even if it flies with a couple of people, it's going to probably not fly with enough other people, and it's probably just not a joke that everybody's going to find really funny. Now, if your business is actually being funny, then is not such a bad thing. I mean, so you know, one of our companies was a comic book company, and they were a little funny. And the answer is, you know, that's kind of okay in that context. So context matters. But I would say, by and large, the one-pager is really like every word is precious, right? So if you don't think being funny it's core to what you're trying to say, then I would not put funny in my one-pager. You could be funny in your 10-minute pitch. But yeah, there you have a little room for funny. But my one-pager, the problem is it's hard to be funny in a one-pager in writing, and too likely to miss, and the words are so precious. I probably wouldn't advise going there in general.
When you did this study of all these one-pagers, is there sort of like a cheat sheet out there now where, you know, this language worked, these guys who framed it this way got funding, or sounded better, more attractive to the
Yeah, so the short answer is we didn't make it a cheat sheet, because there is no, it's not like one size fits all. Having said that, actually, if you look at the paper, it turns out that there are results which are somewhat interesting. For example, I can't even read my own writing here, but if you're looking for sort of, you know, positive language, it turns out that somewhere around 4 kind of positive adjectives, kind of, you know, basic, you know, strong positive adjectives is about the right number. That, you know, 1 or 2 seem to be too little, and 5 or 6 start to get to be too much. In the context of a one-pager, because again, you know, but you know, that's not science. That's not, well, that is science, I suppose. But it's not, you know, it's not like one size, not an absolute answer. But you can sort of get a sense of what looks like too much and what looks like too little. That's kind of why I tried to give you those examples of, you know, what was a strong positive or a strong supplication. You can see that there's a couple, you know, it's more than 1, you know, less than 10. You know, and again, you know, again, Goldilocks. You're looking for just right. And again, as a person, you're going to read it. You're going to show it to your friends and colleagues. They'll help you kind of hone. Well, that sounds a little too over-the-top salesy. Let's dial it back a little bit. Let's make sure you're presenting your best features. And that's why it's a 120-hour project to do one page after you just spent 80 hours doing your business plan.
Right. I mean,